I have a lot to be thankful for tonight. I'm thankful for America and thankful that we are able to resolve our electoral differences in a peaceful way.
Welcome back. Nearly 18 years have passed since George W. Bush gave that victory speech. Since hanging chads and butterfly ballots have become a part of the American lexicon during that 2000 presidential recount. And as we've said, Florida is now recounting all of the votes in last week's too close to call elections for senator and governor. And one of the lawyers who helped put George W. Bush in the White House is trying to put one of this year's candidates in the governor's mansion. But this time around, he is on the side of the Democrat, Andrew Gillum. That lawyer is Barry Richard. He joins us now live from Tallahassee. Barry, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And what is, in your opinion, the key difference between 2018 and 2000?
The key difference really is just in the statutes. After 2000, the legislature overwhelmingly, with bipartisan support, made amendments to Florida statutes to make it more efficient, and we are living with that now. And it is more efficient. We're beginning to discover some problems with it, where some of the efficiency has been at the expense of the ability to count every vote, but it's far less cumbersome than it was last time.
I know you were considering a lawsuit. Where does that stand, and what might you do next for the Gillum campaign?
Well, Mayor Gillum is waiting until all of the evidence is in to decide whether or not he has a viable lawsuit and whether he feels that it makes sense. And we're keeping him apprised of the evidence as it comes in, and we're advising him of his rights. And at some point, he'll make a decision.
And what would you be looking at? Counties missing the deadline, ballots not counted. What is concerning you most right now?
Well, you just named two of them. Well, you named the two. There are some counties that are indicating they may not meet the deadline. That's an equal protection problem, and it's a serious problem for the system. There are also instances in which ballots are not being counted for multiple reasons. Some of them are kicked out by the machines because of undervotes, meaning that there were no votes in one of the races, or overvotes where 2 votes were cast, and it's sometimes discovered that it was a machine fault. There are some instances where people just marked it wrong. They circled the little bubble instead of filling it in, or they wrote the candidate's name in the write-in box, but it was clear what the voters intended. There are other instances in which the envelope in which a mail-in ballot came in had a signature on it that didn't appear to be consistent with the signature in the record. And by the way, I signed when I was 21 years old and first voted, and my signature doesn't look anything like that today. These are not fraud problems. They're problems with the system, and they have to be corrected. But in the meantime, we have to ensure that everybody's vote is counted.
What do you think of the rhetoric that is coming out of Florida? Governor Scott saying that Bill Nelson's trying to steal the election, the president saying there's fraud, that votes are appearing out of nowhere. Jeb Bush has tweeted about this. So has Marco Rubio.
Well, you know, in close elections of this type, this kind of rhetoric, in my experience, is not unusual. I've represented Republicans and Democrats, winners and losers, and unfortunately, it's part of the program. But the reality is that every candidate in a close election turns to his lawyer and says, do I have a chance of winning this in court? Maybe there are some exceptions, but I haven't seen them. And the other side is always saying he's trying to steal the election. But fortunately, we have a very stable electoral system in this state and in this country that we can be proud of. And the way that we resolve these things is in the courtroom, not in the streets. So this is a normal democratic process that we're following.
Well, let's play a soundbite from the courtroom. Here is the Florida Chief Circuit Judge Jack Tudor telling lawyers in the case, the Gillum DeSantis case, to tamp down their rhetoric.
I am urging, because of the highly public nature of this case, to ramp down the rhetoric. Everything the lawyers are saying out there in front of the elections office is being beamed all over the country. We need to be careful what we say. These words mean things these days.
words do mean things, and I should correct myself. It's the Nelson Scott case, not the Gillum DeSantis case. The judge is concerned. You say this happens all the time, but back in 2000, there wasn't Twitter. We didn't have a president who was claiming fraud every time that he didn't think he was going to win something.
Well, the judge was talking to the lawyers, and I didn't mean to suggest that the lawyers are like this all the time. I think that candidates are frequently like this, and I wouldn't feel comfortable speaking to the lawyers he was talking about. For one thing, I didn't see it firsthand. I can only tell you what my practice is, and my practice is that I talk about the law. I don't get involved in the political rhetoric.
Barry, do you think Gillum has a chance?
Of course, he's got a chance. The legislature made that judgment when they passed the statute that said that if you come within 0.5%, you have a chance. If you come within 0.25%, you have such a good chance that we're going to do a hand recount. So yes, he has a chance.
Barry Richard. Barry, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor, subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Beat the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP, and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.